Through the chair, we can begin whenever you are ready.
Back to attendance. Trustee Nathan Young had to leave for a school function in the sense of studying. I have no other regrets from other trustees. I already mentioned Trustee Stefano Pascucci and Trustee Sean Xavier will be attending soon, I would hope. So the first order of business is the opening prayer. If I could just, okay. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Let us pray.
Through the chair, we have to stand for the prayer.
I keep forgetting.
That's why I'm here.
Grant, we pray, Almighty God, that we who glory in the heart of your beloved Son and recall the wonders of his love for us may be worthy to receive an overflowing measure of grace from the fount of heavenly gift through Christ our Lord. Amen. Sacred Heart of Jesus, pray for us. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Trustee De Silva, please. D'Souza.
Thank you. Land acknowledgement. With all that is happening around the world, we are especially conscious of the importance of reconciliation. And for us, in terms of supporting our Indigenous community, reconciliation is about honoring the dish with one spoon, wampum, one of our most foundational territories. The sacrament of reconciliation and the Catholic school teachings of subsidiarity are important anchors for us as a people of Jesus and are important links to our work and to the land. As always, we thank the Mississauga of the credit, our local treaty partners who have been stewards of this land for generations together. We commit to beauty and peace and to fight injustice and vigorously, passionately, resolutely create the future with hope.
Thank you, Trustee D'Souza. First order of business, approval of the agenda. Moved by Trustee D'Souza. Any questions? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Calendar item, construction progress report.
Through the chair, it's there before trustees. If there are any questions, Superintendent Richard Mariah is available to address them.
Any questions? Mario?
Staff, I noticed there's a list of, basically, can we get a list of approved architects that we've used in the recent past, like in the last couple of years? Nothing urgent, just want to find out what's been happening out there. In the old days, we used to do a quite follow-up on the individual architects, but is it possible to do that through you, Mr. Chairman, to the Associate Director?
Through the chair, we can provide a list of the approved architects in
Approved.
issues and events.
Not improved, but approved.
Approved, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mario. Any other questions? Daniel, next order of business.
Thank you. Through the chair, we have no declarations of interest. We move on to item A6, which is the approval of the minutes of the Administration and Finance Committee meeting of April 9th, 2024. And there was an amendment to the Q&A or the business arising, which was sent out as part of the TOPE sheet.
Yes, and the date on that should be, according to the COPE sheet, April 6th,
April
2024. Daniel?
So we're looking for approval of those minutes.
Moved by Luz. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Thank you. And again, through the chair, moving on, there are no awards and presentations, no delegations. We move on to item D, which are reports from trustees for receipt. D1A is a regular reports from the Ontario Catholic School Trustees Association.
Luz?
We do not have a report at this time, Mr. Chair.
Trustee Pascucci, do you have any?
There's no report at this time, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Through the chair, we move on to good news items.
Any good news? Luz, Bria, please go ahead. No, Bria, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. I have several good news items which I've sent to our recording secretary, but I just wanted to highlight this evening, St. Richard Catholic Elementary School had a Hope Stone United Retreat for students in grades 5 and 6. This retreat focused on assisting students to see the need to come together, reminding them that we cannot walk together if we cannot stand together. They were challenged to participate in active and practical exercises to reach out to people who are not in their typical friendship circles. The activities helped to foster a community of respect. Similarly, the grade 7 and 8 students participated in the Hope Stone Revive Retreat. This retreat focused on assisting students to see what happens after their sacrament of confirmation, how they navigate their lives with these new gifts. A large focus of the retreat was on finding hope in the most hopeless of situations. Topics such as loneliness, mental health, family, loss, and disappointment were addressed in the retreat. Students learned practical ways to move towards the direction of finding peace and joy when they feel disconnected by their peers, their family, and the world in general. St. Teresa of Avila Catholic Elementary School on May 17th, in collaboration with our St. John of the Cross Parish and the Rosary Apostolates, the school hosted a ceremony honoring the Lady of Guadalupe. Students in the school participated in the ceremonies by praying the rosary in their native languages and by leading the school in prayer. As part of the monthly campaign in honoring Mother Mary, St. Teresa of Avila prayed over 1,000 rosaries, in addition to the rosaries that were prayed during the 2 ceremonies. In partnership with this event, the school's annual perennial drive occurred at the school, where members of the community donated perennial plants from their own gardens to beautify the grounds. These lovely donations served to adorn the statue of the Virgin Mary during the ceremony and were later planted in the gardens of St. Teresa of Avila School to enjoy it for years to come. And lastly, Mr. Chair, St. Teresa the Child Jesus Catholic Elementary School participated in the Freewheeler School Bike Safety Day. The event featured interactive safety workshops, bike maintenance tutorials, and exciting obstacle courses designed to teach essential biking skills. Peel Health nurse Jacqueline Newman provided invaluable insights on safe riding practices. With a turnout surpassing expectations, the event not only boosted confidence in young cyclists, but also fostered a culture of safety and awareness within the community. It was a big success, and we thank all the teachers and parent volunteers who made this day a special one. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Bria. Any other good news stories? Seeing none, next order of business, Daniel.
Thank you. Through the chair, we move on to section E, which are reports from committee and administration for receipt. Item E1 is the March 28th, 2024 enrollment report. Trustees would be familiar with this report. It's one of 3 enrollment reports that we provide throughout the year. If there are any questions in the information contained within the report, Manager Stephanie Cox of Planning is here to address those questions.
Thank you. Any questions, Bria? I already knew.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, thank you, Associate Director Del Bianco, for the enrollment report. I know parents ask whether there's a way that the system reorganization that we do annually in September, is there a way for that to possibly be avoided? And I don't know if that is related to the enrollment reports or the timing. I know we typically allocate the first PA day every year for reorganization. And while not all of our schools have movement, it is disruptive to the students in those classes that do so. So I'm just wondering through the chair, is there a way that through our enrollment reporting, perhaps at the end of August, would that help us avoid this in September? I ask this because in Mississauga North Family of Schools, we're not seeing significant enrollment changes from the time class placements are done at the end of August to when school starts in the first week of September.
So thank you. Through the chair, staffing actually begins the previous school year and the best plans are laid in place. But what we run into is that we have a number of students that end up registering at the end of the summer or in through September and the early part of September. For those trustees that have brand new developments in their areas, you'd be familiar with homes closing nonstop. So the reason why we have the date that we've selected is that it allows registrations at the schools to stabilize before any change can be made. So even if hypothetically you were to make the reorganization date in August, you would still have a number of students that would come in early September, and we'd still have to reorganize again. So what we've tried to do is make it early enough in the school year, so we impact the fewest amount of students. There are other school boards that have even a later organization or reorg date, so it allows students to settle in. But because of the influx of registrations and enrollments in late August and throughout the early part of September, it's impossible to do it any earlier and commit to that.
That's fair. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Associate Director Del Bianco.
Thank you, Bria. Any other questions? Seeing none, Daniel, next order of business, please.
Thank you. We move on to item E2, which is the Student Transportation Update and Service Delivery Report. With me this evening and presenting the report in person is General Manager Anna Gentile, and providing support virtually, or he was there a little while ago, is Manager Darcy Ford, both from Stop R. So Anna.
Thank you, AD Del Bianco, and through you, Mr. Chair. Before you is a Student Transportation Update and Service Delivery Report. So beginning with the bus driver status, there's nothing really new here to report from our last meeting. The bus operators for both Stop R and STWDSTS have been confirming that they have enough drivers to service all of our routes. This is reflected in our delays, which are looking good, and in fact, and the fact that we have not had any major service issues or disruptions in the last few months. Looking ahead to 2024, Stop Our management team will be meeting with all the operators this summer. At those meetings, we will have all our transportation requirements for September, and then we can confirm with each division how their driver status is looking and what they are able to service for us. The next item is an update on our spring newsletter. Here, we're just letting you know that the newsletter was emailed to all schools in the middle of May and posted on all of our Stop Our social media sites. The next update is on the Chipmunk School Bus Tracking app. As you know, we have been testing this application for the entire year, and the pilot will now come to an end. The goal of the pilot was to identify the app's features, detect any issues, and ultimately determine if the app meets the needs of our parent communities. Our tech team has been working closely with the developer on a number of items throughout the year and will soon make a final assessment on the app's potential. A recommendation will be provided to our Stop Our Governance Committee from there, and a decision will be made on next steps. The next item is the Student Transportation Fund that was released by the Ministry of Education on April 26, 2024. The new transportation funding formula is based on a routing simulation of transported students and the number of routes required using common eligibility distances set by the ministry. It is important to note that the ministry is using these common eligibility distances for funding purposes, however, has not mandated that school boards adopt these policies at this time. That being said, Stop Our will be creating a working group that will investigate the impact on the potential implementation of these common distances in our region. The study will take into consideration a variety of potential impacts, including the sourcing of new vehicles, driver recruitment strategies, school site management, and of course, funding. A report will be produced for Stop Our Governance Committee and then distributed to both boards. The final item on the Transportation Service Delivery Report is the tracking of school bus delays. Stop Our has provided graphs showing the number of delays per week in the months of April and May 2024. We have also listed the top 3 schools with the most delays in those months. In the report, you will see a brief summary of the reasons for the delays and the actions that staff have taken to improve service delivery. This concludes the Transportation Update and Service Delivery Report. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mario?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, A question I'd like to ask, if I may, on page 25, St. Sophia. St. Sophia, I recognize the distance that it covers and where the location is relative to a lot of the students. The concern I have is the amount of time that these buses tend to be later, and I understand why. It is sincere, just the distance. The question I have to ask is this: are we breaking any rules, regulations regarding the? And I would think the answer is no, regarding the lengthy time somebody's on a bus, travel time, or anything of that nature.
So through the chair, I can start. When they set out the routes, we're not in violation of any length of time on the bus. If there is a delay because of an accident or weather that's beyond our control, that may push the drive times a little bit longer. But the routes are scheduled in accordance with our policies.
And at this point, there's what, how many buses would there be offhand? 22, 24, something like that?
At St. Sophia, I believe somewhere in the 20s. I don't know offhand.
And recognize the street that is going down, a lot of parking that's illegal in that area. The concern I have is regarding these buses going up and down, that they're safely. Not that our bus drivers are bad drivers, but the fact is, at the end of the day, buses have to go down. Is there any concern we should be advising the counselor for our concern?
Which road, which
Is maybe
roads are you
it'd be,
speaking of?
Glen Haven, I think the school is on Glen Haven, that's that street there.
Okay, so sorry, was there an issue on Glen Haven
No, what
Road?
I'm saying is that I noticed that there's been a lot of busing issues, sorry, there's been a lot of issues regarding crowded roads because of people who illegally
Congestion.
park, congestion,
Yeah.
whatever. Have we encountered anything that's over and above the norm? We should be talking to the
To
local.
the safety councils?
Yes.
I mean, our department hasn't received any complaints or
Okay.
of issues, but yes, generally, when we do receive complaints of traffic congestion, we would call the safety councils to do a site inspection.
Last question, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. The question I have to ask is that I'm the neighbor of St. Basil's School, which I'm not complaining about, but the busing, the traffic is crazy. But I'm not the only one. So the question I have to ask is that, what is the protocol we must follow when we're going to make a formal complaint to the city and traffic safety and the police regarding tagging? Is there a protocol we must follow, at least in Mississauga?
Okay, well, with the city of Mississauga, you would just call the Traffic Safety Council and report your incident and ask for a site inspection.
I'll do that then. I'll expect something for you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mario. Daryl, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm seeing the delays at St. Lucie Catholic Elementary School. So those 18 days, we're looking at 12 days, there were delays, and the reason given was lack of spare drivers. Between the 17th of May and today, has that been resolved?
Well, so that particular company is struggling with drivers. So it would likely mean that our staff have called them and asked them to cover the St. Lucie runs and just, you know, I don't want to say spread the pain, but spread the pain sort of thing, right? So I do believe these ones were resolved for St. Lucie. Let me just check here. Were they both April and May? No,
April 29th to May 17th.
April 29th and May 7th.
5 15-minute
Yeah,
delays.
I
and
don't
7
know
20 minutes.
exactly. That could have also been a driver on vacation and then the driver returning, and then it would have been resolved on its own.
Through the chair, if it'll help, we'll just clarify exactly what steps were taken to rectify the
Issues and
situation.
events?
Well, before issues and events, but we'll make sure it's in issues and events, and it'll be in the business arising so that anybody listening in will have that addressed for them as well.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I don't know the particulars on that one as far as why it was delayed.
Well, the reason specified above in your notes says that there was lack of spare drivers.
Lack of spare drivers, correct.
Was the reason, so just wondering if spare drivers have now become permanent or.
So through the chair, what I will say, sometimes it's spare drivers in a particular area, and as General Manager Gentile mentioned, there's two things that Stop R does. One, they can either reassign routes to existing other service providers that have a surplus of drivers, or two, if they find that it's particular drivers in a school community or particular runs in a school community, they will take drivers from other communities so that it's not every day the same school over and over. They just take them from others and share that burden across multiple schools.
Just one last question, Mr. Chairman. Do we have any penalties for delays of this sort in the contract with these companies?
Yes, we do have penalties, and this particular bus company, we have been penalizing them, yes.
Can we see those penalties in this report saying that these are the bus companies that have been penalized for whatever reasons?
You want those listed?
Through the
Yeah.
chair, what we'll do is, because I believe our next report's not till September, so
Yeah, yeah.
I think we are in dealing with the former superintendent whose name shall not be mentioned this evening, but we talked about just revamping the stop R update to make it more user-friendly. It served its purpose up until now, but we'll be looking at feedback for other content to move forward, and that is exactly one that we can include as we refresh the report for the 2024-25 school year.
Thank you, Associate Director. Thank you, Anno. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Daryl. Before I go to Lou's, not to get into the conversation, but if we made that public in a report, would that not be confidential information?
Through the chair, we're going to take it away, and we'll just make sure that what we can share, at least in the public version of the report, meets all of our contractual guidelines, and then we'll see how we navigate that.
Daryl, you're good? Lou's?
Who's that hand? But me first.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question on Chipmunk. So after the end of June, you're going to do the assessment. When do you think we can expect that result of the assessment?
So through the chair, we'll be at Stop R continues to work all summer long. They're not off for the summer. They're planning for the summer. So we'll take all that feedback that we've received, both from the parents. It'll go through Stop R governance committee first, and then there'll be a report that comes back to the Board of Trustees. So based on the timeline, it may not be until August board meeting where we can have something back to trustees. If anything were to happen before then, we do have issues and events that we can share that information so we don't have to sit on it and wait until that long.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair, just want to
Go ahead.
follow up.
Yes.
Through the chair, to the associate director. So that's the report to us, but when would the parents know that they'll be part of the Chipmunk project?
So through the chair, we've been expanding it all throughout the
Oh, throughout the year?
2023-24 school year. So we started with a smaller group of schools and we kept on adding and adding to build our database of what works, what doesn't work, and what the parents want. So we have all that. We just have to analyze it all, and we'll be back again before the end of August.
Okay, my concern is just, I want to make sure the parents are aware. Some of them were not sure. I just have one more
Go ahead,
question.
Luz.
Just my other question, and thank you about that. My other question is, I received a message from the counselor of the St. Gregory area, and basically asking to meet because of the congestion. Have you heard any complaints, or unless they're not coming to us, it's going to them directly? So there's been a major congestion in the, can I say the school? The St. Gregory area.
Through the chair, just to clarify, we just quickly looked at each other. There's been nothing specifically that's come our way. Is this congestion on the roads, parking on the roads?
Yes.
Or is this congestion on the school site?
No, it's congestion on the roads. I think through the chair, a few months ago, I think I raised that because we did do a site visit, morning and afternoon. And there were cars parked already on the driveway and park on the streets as well, which is before dismissal time. So dismissal is at 2:45. At 2:15, there are already cars parked on the streets. So it affected, I think, the other schools' dismissal as well.
Through the chairs, we've got a lot of control on what happens on our school sites. I say that a bit tongue, but with regards to on-street parking or anybody violating on-street parking, that would be a municipal requirement. to go out and either change what's allowable with regards to on-street parking. That one is out of our, that one's out of our control. But we can work with the municipality, but we have yet to hear anything from the municipality.
Okay. Through the chair, that's what I'm looking for, is really, I'm going to meet with him and probably do another site visit, and I'll get back to you, and hopefully we can work something out. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Luz. Stefano?
Mr. Chairman, through you, to Associate Director Del Bianco or the individual there from Stopar. When the routes are created, if a bus has to turn around, how is it routed? Like, how is the bus driver provided that information on how to turn around?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So do you don't mean when backing up, right? They're not backing up. They're not allowed to back up.
No, here's well, I'll tell you exactly what the issue is. Handful of times, and unfortunately, I don't have the actual bus number in front of me, and if I did, I'd provide it to you guys on an email. I've witnessed a bus driving through the school drop off at 7:30, 7:40 in the morning, while parents are rushing to get their kids into school, or the Plasper, whatever it is. Are bus drivers supposed to be doing that? Are
No.
they supposed to be using the school driveways to turn around?
So they're only to go into school driveways if they're dropping off or picking up, so not to use it for a turnaround. So if you
Okay.
have a specific incident, you can just let me know.
Appreciate it. Thank you. And then the next question is, and I forgot it now. Don't worry about it. All right. Thank you very much for that reply. I'll definitely send you over the information if I have it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Stefano. I'll pass the chair. Oh, Bria, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, I know I've been really interested to see how we are going to align, or if we can align our distance criteria thresholds with the ministry's criteria. I know on page 25 of the report, the ministry hasn't mandated school boards to revise their current transportation policies to match the CRS criteria. I'm just wondering, when do we get the funding for that new criteria? Do we have any information on that?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we just did receive the funding through that. Back in the fall, we did do a transportation simulation that we sent to the ministry. And in that simulation, we did lower the distances to match their distances. I believe between both boards, there were approximately, well, just over 8,000 new eligible riders and over 150 new routes. So that's the information that we provided them, and that's the funding that we received.
Thank you, thank you. And through you, Mr. Chairman, I actually did see that, and I wasn't going to ask the question until we got to the next report, because I know it was indicated on page 33 that there was approximately 13,000 students compared to the live databases. So I don't know if the 8,000 you're referring to, was that Dufferin Peel?
It could have been
Students?
either Dufferin Peel or Peel, one of them, yes.
Okay, so through the chair, so if we've received the funding already for those new distance criterias, then when do you see us being able to look at aligning some of those distances, even with our coterminus board? I know it's not easy and obviously requires additional buses, extra routes, more students that would be eligible. I'm just wondering if there's a plan or if that's still forthcoming.
So through the chair, before we get to the plan, I know that Executive Superintendent Chair Pak, I wanted to add a bit on the funding component of it, then I can speak more to the plan.
Yeah, yes, thanks through the chair. Just rather quickly, when the announcements were made last year for GSN at the time, there was a change to the transportation grant funding formula. The ministry had embarked on that change. It took them a long time. And this is what they came out with, funding on these new components. So we received a new base funding this year, 23-24, and the model will continue into next year. And this model includes the fact that your routes and your distances would be at those rates that the ministry has listed. But I know what Associate Director will tell you now is we're not there for some of them, but really what our options are for getting there or not and what decisions have to be made.
So through the chair, the earliest that this would ever take effect is September 2025. We're going to take again the summer, and there'll be a number of decision points the trustees will have to make along the way, because every scenario we have is going to have an impact one way or another. There'll be more routes, there'll be more buses required, there'll be more drivers required, and it may have an adverse impact on our transportation budget. And then how would we fund that? So even though they've changed funding, it may not align with what the cost of our drivers are, the number of buses, the number of routes, and whatnot. So, and at the end of the day, it would require a policy change on behalf of the trustees in conjunction with the appeal board. So we're going to take the early part of the school year to start bringing that and sharing that information as we digest it ourselves.
Thank you.
I'll pass the chair on to Trustee Pascucci. I know I heard it right, 150 new routes and 8,000 new kits, and we start in September 2025. Is that 150 routes for Dufferin Peel or collectively?
Collectively.
And what would that be for Dufferin Peel? 50? Approximately?
I'm not sure. I'd have to get back to you on that one.
Through the chair, 50 is if you just use the same calculation we've been using, it's either about 50 or 60 runs for us.
50 or 60. So it'd be 50 or 60% of 40% of the 8,000, roughly, in that ballpark. Okay. My question specifically is St. Martin Secondary School. Most of the kids that go there should be within walking distance. So my question is, why do we have any buses going to St. Martin's? St. Martin's is a walking community, and the sports schism is a self-desired location where parents would drop off the kids.
Sorry, what are you asking? If and how many buses are at St. Martin's?
Well, no, I'm asking why we have busing at St. Martin's, considering that most of the kids that come, I see well, now I see them in the morning because I'm out in that area in the morning. And I see the kids taking the bus on here, Ontario, to go up to Dundas and then across, and then they walk down. So, and the sports schism should not be offering transportation to my recollection. And the kids from St. Catherine of Siena are all walking distance because of the location. Today, in 2025, that'll change. But I'm not sure why we have busing at St. Martin's.
Okay, so through you, Chair, I will double check that and get back to you. There could be, the only reasons would be either A, the students are over 3.8 kilometers from the school. B, they're in a specialized program or a special education program. And those kind of are the only two reasons. So I will double check to see what type of students or what classes are transported and get back to you.
I mean, if you could put in issues and events, I mean, today's Tuesday, the following Friday, that would suffice. I will say that I'm a little bit concerned with the additional drivers that we require in the new process. Looking at all of these schools, the majority of them, or at least a couple of them anyway, are driver shortages. And right now, if we're experiencing driver shortages, add another 150 to Dufferin Peel general area, we're going to have minimum 150 shortages. I'm concerned about that, and I'm not sure if the ministry has made any provision from a salary perspective, because our costs are different which I don't understand why the ministry wouldn't have calculated what each
Thank you.
board's actual costs are in order to retain and attract drivers. So if staff can,
Through the chair, the ministry has taken steps. There's a driver retention program that pays out multiple times a year. If you stay for the first part of the year, and then second part, there's a payout as well. What we run into is exactly what we ran into pre-COVID. It's just not an occupation that a lot of people either stay in or are interested in. And there's a number of our drivers, not our drivers, the bus operator drivers, that take prolonged vacations throughout a school year, and that's what leads to it as well. So there's a number of challenges that we've had, and it's a concern that absolutely trustees are going to have to consider as they move forward with what we want to do with our policy, both on the financial impact, but on the operationability of changing it.
and last question, just with regards to the allocation of funds from the ministry to the board or boards. In order to get those funds, must it meet the new criterias? Because if staff is advising that we're going to have to look at and make decisions, then I'd like to know if there's implications of not receiving those funds. And I know it will come in the report, and I'm just asking if staff have any indications on whether we must or should, which is a big difference in the process of accepting those funds.
So through the chair, I'll start on the funding. So this current year, 23-24, when the ministry did revise the funding formula for transportation, as always, when they do something like that, we see winners and losers across the province. They take the same pool of funds, come up with a new model, and redistribute the funds. So across this province, we've had boards that maybe have gone up in transportation funding and others that have gone down. Dufferin Peel remained relatively, I'm not going to say stable, we lost a little bit, but we were relatively stable across that change. The issue is all of this has already been taken into consideration with the new funding model. We're not going to get any more funding. If we move to these new distance criteria, it will cost the board fund expenditure, but we will get no additional funds for that. It's already been worked into the new funding model. What we do is continue to discuss with the ministry, point out where it falls short, the impact of Dufferin Peel, and many other boards are doing the same thing. All we can do is plead our case and continue to tell them where the funding is not meeting the needs of the board. So the other piece is that we have not been mandated to move to the new distance criteria. That may come, but at this point, we have not been mandated to make the change. If we do make a change, I believe we've had a few years. Associate Director Del Bianco mentioned we would have to implement September of 2025 to make the change, but there has been no mandated requirement as yet. So we're taking the time over the next year to review the impact, what it would mean, what's the cost, what has to be put in place to do it, and then that information would come forward to the trustees.
I don't know, and so I'm assuming, and sometimes that's not a good thing, that going down to these levels would cost the board significantly if we're just covering, in fact, we probably short in transportation. So going down to these levels, I would bet would be millions, not thousands or hundreds of thousands, millions. Would that be an approximate? My approximate guess, would it be close that it would not be 500,000, or staff just doesn't know? And if the staff doesn't know, I'm okay with, we'd have to investigate and get back. No problem.
Through the chair, I don't want to put out a number this prematurely, but it'll be an increased cost.
Okay, thank you. Chairman,
Anybody else? Here goes back to Bruno.
thank you. Associate Director, next order of business.
Thank you. Moving on through the agenda, we're on to item E3, which is the Stopper Governance Committee minutes of January 26, 2024. They're there for trustees to review, and should you have any questions, both General Manager Gentile and myself are here, along with Manager Ford, to answer any questions.
There is no movement for acceptance. Any questions on the report? Seeing none, Associate Director.
Thank you. We move on to item E4, which is the boundary adjustment for St. Edmund Catholic Elementary School and St. Alfred Catholic Elementary School. And to present the report, I invite Senior Planner Joanne Rogers.
Joanne, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, and through the chair. On an annual basis, the Planning Department conducts a review of school boundaries and recommends boundary adjustments to address enrollment pressures and to balance enrollments in neighborhood schools. This year, staff identified that a boundary adjustment is required between St. Edmund and St. Alfred Catholic Elementary Schools. The table on page 35 of the agenda package summarizes the current accommodation statistics at St. Edmund Catholic Elementary School. St. Edmund has an on-the-ground capacity of 237 pupil places and a current enrollment of 391 students. The school operates at 165% utilization, which means that it is oversubscribed. There are also 4 portables on site, which is the maximum number of portables that can be placed here. Currently, there are 6,000 new residential units proposed in the area of the St. Edmund boundary that is north of the CP rail and south of Dundas Street, which will be referred to as Area A in this report. The projected yield for this future development is approximately 240 elementary students and 125 secondary students. It would be prudent to make this boundary adjustment while there are fewer students affected by the relocation. The boundary adjustment would take effect September 2025. While the enrollment growth is not expected to be significant, it will impact the number of portables required at St. Edmund, which is a 3.3-acre site with space for a maximum of 4 portables. Dufferin Peel is currently working with the Peel District School Board to place portables on the adjacent Peel District School Board Southfield office property. This is not a permanent accommodation solution, as Peel District School Board could provide notice to Dufferin Peel to vacate the site if they require it for their own accommodation use. In light of the current enrollment situation at St. Edmund and in anticipation of the proposed development, it is recommended students be directed to St. Alfred. The chart on page 36 of the report highlights the accommodation statistics of St. Edmund and St. Alfred. St. Alfred has an on-the-ground capacity of 444 pupil places and a current enrollment of 273 students. The school operates at 84% utilization. There's also a 6-classroom relocatable classroom module available to accommodate future enrollment growth. The enrollment at St. Alfred is projected to remain relatively stable over the next 5 years. However, at St. Edmund, the enrollment is projected to grow to 499 students by 2028 without the boundary adjustment. There are currently 13 existing students who live in Area A and attend St. Edmund. The enrollment in this area is expected to increase to 34 students over the next 5 years and by over 100 students over the next 10 years. The table on page 37 shows the enrollment projections for St. Alfred and St. Edmund after the boundary adjustment has been made. On April 18th, 2024, a community open house was held at St. Alfred to present the boundary adjustment. Approximately 6 families attended the meeting. The primary concern expressed was about transportation not being provided for students currently attending St. Edmund who opt to not move to St. Alfred in September 2025. Staff noted that operating 2 separate bus routes in the same neighborhood that serve 2 different schools is not economically viable for the board. A proposal to adjust the boundary for St. Edmund effective September 2025 is recommended. All current St. Edmund Catholic Elementary School students residing within Area A will have the option to remain at St. Edmund. However, transportation will not be provided. All new elementary student registrations in Area A will be redirected to St. Alfred Catholic Elementary School in September 2025. Transportation will be provided to all students from Area A to St. Alfred only. Secondary students who reside in Area A currently attend St. Paul Catholic Secondary School. Grade 8 students from Area A graduating from St. Edmund in June 2025, and new secondary students registering from Area A for September 2025 will be directed to Philip Pocock, and transportation will be provided. That concludes this report, and if trustees have any questions, Manager Cox and I are available to answer them.
Thank you, Mario.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a number of questions because this isn't my community, and it's quite exciting to see something happening within the community because of the, well, the slow growth, but now with the peak growth. Question to you, staff, if I may. I realize that you did that meeting on April 18th, and I thank you for doing that. The concern I have is there was only 6 families or something, but to the defense of the community, it is a community that's a working community that doesn't have the flexibility of some other communities within Mississauga or Brampton, what have you. I don't want that number to be taken just as not caring, just that they just couldn't make it. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask through you to staff, realizing this is going to impact a number of people in the St. Alfred's area, is there a possibility of having something at the school in September of this year? When the school opens, late September, early October. So we invite this information to the community because the busing will start in 2025, and hopefully we'll have a better handle of what kind of numbers. The question I have to ask through you to staff is the fact is that can we arrange a meeting for September, late September, early October with the community, literally give them this information on a one-to-one basis, give them another opportunity to take a look at that. Is that possible, Mr. Chairman?
If I can, through the chair, what I suggest we do is working with trustee Mario Pascucci as well as the school administrator, find out what may be required, and we can design something around that,
Excellent.
whether it's a newsletter or whether it's an open house or what.
Yes, if I may, Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
I would like that idea. That's a great idea. Thank you. I would like to make sure that they get constantly told, because there's going to be some fundamental changes here where some peak communities, there aren't that many cars that go in and out of there, unfortunately. It does get busy, but the fact is that it's a very crowded area, so that's a concern I have. Another item I'd like to talk about is, in fact, staff, when they presented this to me the way back when, I want to say thank you very much for a complete report, and it stopped a lot of good questions, no question. Stopped a lot of questions. What I'm asking here in the next question is, the next comment is this: recognizing there's some changes coming that are substantial to St. Alfred's, is there any opportunity we can put together a case study for our friends at the ministry, recognizing they do their own little thing, but recognizing that is there any way, shape, or form we can get money for St. Alfred's? St. Alfred's is a school that was built, what, in 1960? Approximately 62, something like that?
So through the chair, what I will say to that is, as soon as the ministry announces its next round of capital priorities, depending on what their criteria they ask
Yes,
for
of
are,
course.
we would reload our information on St. Alfred, but now it would include the revised projections for St. Alfred, and they'd be higher, so the school would be more utilized. But as long as the criteria allows us to submit, then yes.
Well, also the idea we can communicate with the local MPP, but that may be difficult in the current situation. The fact is that, thank you, they were on the schedule 3 years ago, I think it was, and unfortunately were just stepped over by the ministry and said, we're going to give the money somewhere else. This has a library story pit, which is really nice, stairs and chairs and what have you, but slightly archaic in the way it looks. School looks in great condition considering what it is. Principal is an amazing principal who's got an incredible connection with the community. So, and the regarding the EQAO, is there an opportunity we can take a look at that as well, how that's affecting the school? I need a baseline to work from so that in a couple of years, when this finally comes online, we can go back and see what's happening. Because this community is really in difficult needs. There are a portion of the community that actually live in a hotel, motel. So that's the concern I'm working with, and being able to get something for these young people. They have some computers they share and internet connection, which is unstable at best. So this is why I'm rather aggressive on it. So through you, Mr. Chairman, I want to say thank you very much. I'd love to get together with you probably in the next week or two and discuss this in terms of next steps. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none. Daniel, next order of business.
Thank you. Just want to make sure we have a cast behind us here. So our next report, which through the chair was circulated as part of the TOPE sheet, is the Energy Management Initiatives Update Report. This was a report requested by trustees to provide an update as to the energy management initiatives we've undertaken to date and new ones that we're projected to undertake in the years moving forward. So to present the report, I invite Acting Superintendent Richard Mariah, as well as Manager of our Energy Management Department, Edward Kai, to present the report.
Thank you, and welcome to each and every one of you. And first report, I believe, Acting Supervisory Officer Richards, welcome. And the floor is yours and your teams.
Thank you very much, and good evening, trustees. And yes, the energy management is an integrated part of the board's long-term facilities master plan to support ongoing instructional services and facility operations. Energy conservation not only contributes to the long-term sustainability, but also plays an important part in total cost containment of utilities for the board. Performance review of the past 5 years of our plan from 2019 to 2023 reveals that the following achievement of energy conservation, and it's reflected by the reduction of energy consumption and utility costs. Cumulative energy reduction is 19.7 million equivalent kilowatt hours. Cumulative utility cost containment, $6.5 million. As per the regulation, Ontario Regulation 25/23, broader public sector, organizations are required, BPS organizations are required to update conservation and demand management plans every 5 years. Accordingly, Dufferin Peel is currently developing a new plan to outline strategies, set up goals, specify measures and initiatives over the next 5 years from 2024 to 2028. Our energy conservation goal is to further reduce the overall energy intensity by 5% in 2028 against the 2023 baseline. Now I will turn it over to the manager, Edward Kai, to go through the details of what happened in 2019 to 2023 and what we're looking ahead for the next 5 years.
Thank you, Acting Superintendent Morea. Good evening, everyone. And through the chair, I'm happy to provide some updates on energy initiative that Dufferin Peel has been implementing to supporting our energy conservation goal. This initiative and measures can be broken down into 3 categories. Category 1 is design, construction, retrofitting. And category 2 is operations and maintenance. And category 3 is occupants behavior and awareness training. Some highlights for the past 5 years from 2019 and 2023, including energy efficient design for our 2 new schools. Sorry. And also LED retrofitting for 90 schools and high efficiency condensing boilers for 43 schools. And we also completed BIS, the building automation system upgrading and replacement in 73 buildings. Also, we supported some green initiative, including Eco School certification in all our 151 schools. School energy challenge in 111 schools, EarthHour 119 schools, and also National Sweater Day in 121 schools. It's a collective, effective effort for the past 5 years. It's a congratulations to everyone in Dufferin Peel community for the achievement so far. So let's look into the next 5 years, and we will continue with what we have done so far, taking the initiative to further push forward our energy conservation. And one highlight I want to mention here is green building design standards. Some message already coming from the Ministry of Education through the OMC meeting. So ministry is in supporting on adopting of a green building design and in the future. So City of Toronto already have its own citywide green building standard. So it's an encouraging message from the ministry. At the same time, we will continue with the LED retrofitting, high efficient HVAC system, and also automation, and install some more real-time monitoring. Because high quality energy data is the basis for wise decision-making. One step further, we're looking into the future because significant changes are anticipated within the energy sector, including electrification and decarbonization. And this is a trend, this is the future, and the future is here. So we need to take additional action to make different future approved. So beyond the traditional energy conservation, focus on consumption reduction and cost saving, we now may need to pay more attention to emission reduction, also sustainability in general. Okay, so just to highlight a couple of points. One example is ESG program. It's coming. It's standing for environmental, society, and governance. Whether or not it's a regulatory or voluntary requirement, we will start reporting the emission for scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. It's something new, it's evolving, and we are still learning. And so we need to closely following up the development of this trend. At the same time, something we can do is perform gap analysis on our existing mechanical and electrical system for the transition to a low carbon energy future. For example, if we want to do electrification for building heating, get rid of all the natural gas burning equipment, how are we going to do that? Is our current hydro capacity in the building can handle additional working load? And also with additional cooling capacity being added, can our existing hydro handle the additional load? Also, a lot of things, other things beyond our control, maybe is utility company and also the provincial-wide grid capacity. All this kind of thing are taken into the consideration. We also need to establish the facility database and also equipment inventory. Anyhow, we need to stay abreast with the new developments on energy technology and new products. For example, the heat pump unit, air source heat pumps unit 10 years ago, they may not function very well under -5 degrees Celsius. But now the technology is already being able to handle quite a low temperature during wintertime in Toronto area. So when we spending a lot of money to updating equipment to replace some boiler HVAC system, we need to consider, do not do kind of always do the like-to-like replacement. We may want to leverage the new technology to performing and pushing the sustainability. Anyway, in summary, WPO has a long-term commitment on energy conservation through ongoing capital investment, operation optimization, and also awareness training, as well as take a forward-thinking approach to a broader sustainability strategy for the year to coming. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions? Seeing none?
Mr. Chairman, I do. Stefano?
Stefano, go ahead.
Thank you. So thank you very much for the report. It's always great to hear Edward Kai speak. He's so enthusiastic about it. Out of curiosity, with these the new funding, if I heard correctly, the new funding that's coming from the government or the new requirements are coming from the government, is there going to be any funding for, I don't know, solar power or, getting small little wind turbines for schools? Is there anything, is there, what's happening? Are they going to be giving us more money, or is it just you have to do this from now on?
For solar and wind turbine, to my understanding, there is no designated funding so far for this type of items. And my memory is about 15 years ago, and the government gave us a one-time funding for solar panel.
Mhm.
Therefore, we have 4 schools with a solar voltaic panel on the roof. Now they're on commercial operation, so generate credit for the board. Thank you.
Are we able to look at, obviously everything costs money, but are we able to approach companies that are out there that may be looking for sites to use as a promotion for their business?
Through the chair, yes. One business approach is some company a couple years ago, they approached us, want to rent our roof to put some solar panels. And after some analysis and feasibility study, at that time may not be a good choice, but we can revisit this idea. The main concern at that time is the roofing condition. And because if you install the solar panel, it's going to be make the roof new for the next 20 years. Something a lot of associate are kind of coordinating work with the building function and its condition.
Through the chair, if I can, having gone through this in the past, companies do approach us from time to time, but you have to, as Edward mentioned, when we designed and built the schools originally, they weren't designed to withhold the weight of solar panels on the roof. So a lot of the time, the load that the roof can accommodate is far less than what the solar panels are. So it's not only just a matter of them approaching us, but it's also making sure that the school at which they're looking at can accommodate the additional weight of the solar panels without any real structural work that needs to be done to the roof.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, that makes sense. Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, gentlemen.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair, we move on to item E6, which is our annual health and safety report, which begins on page 40 of the report. Presenting the next 2 reports, I invite our Manager of Health and Safety, Jessica Fearing, and Superintendent Strong. And we'll begin with the health and safety report.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm pleased to begin with our highlights and annual report from the Health and Safety Department for the 2022-2023 school year. The board currently functions as a multi-workplace joint health and safety committee, and the Ministry of Labor, Immigration, Training and Skills Development Regional Program Coordinator has recently approved our revised terms of reference for the continuation to operate under a multi-workplace structure for another 5 years. The revised TOR, or Terms of Reference, was approved in May of 2023 and will expire on May 31st, 2028. One of the functions of the Health and Safety Department is under OSHA to oversee the monthly workplace inspections. A total of 166 sites are inspected each month, and recently our inspections were done using a paper-based system. I am pleased to inform trustees that we have finally transitioned to an online system known as eBase. eBase is a cloud-based facilities management software that offers various modules for facilities to track, record, analyze their assets and processes in real time. The incidents and accidents reports for Dufferin Peel are tracked using a software program called Park Lane. On page 42 of your report, trustees can find Appendix A, which will include the comparison of the last 2 years of incident data by school year. So on page 42, Appendix A, you will note that these are incident reports that are reported by staff. you will see that we have caught in or between, exposure, other, overexertion, slips and falls, struck against, struck with or by, and violence. I would like to note that a single incident of violence often generates multiple reports. So these statistics do not represent one report for one incident. It's also important to recognize that the definition of violence under OSHA is not only a physical exertion of force of a person against a worker, but also an attempt to exert physical force against a worker. So if a worker feels threatened by violence, it is categorized here as violence. If you take a look at the total comparison number of reports, while we are significantly higher than last year, we are still below our pre-pandemic reports. The 2018-2019 year, for example, had us in at 2,460. If trustees will turn to page 43 and 44 of the report, this is where we break down these incidents into 3 different types of categories: whether or not they represented a hazardous situation, whether or not first aid was required, and whether or not healthcare was required. So while the total number of incidents reported may be high, the number of incidents requiring first aid were quite low and even lower for healthcare. A hazardous situation is defined as the potential for harm. So very similar when we see violent incidents reported as actual violence, it can also be the perception of violence. And that is a similar scenario under hazardous situations. First aid is very minor. It's done at the school. Ice, a bandage, minor cuts and scratches. Healthcare is when the individual does require medical attention. And I'm happy to answer any questions the trustees may have.
Trustee D'Souza?
You, Mr. Chairman, this chart 2 shows us a total of 685 incidents or claims. So does that mean out of your 2,237, we had only 600 odd claims?
So these incident by claims are only looking at those 2 categories of healthcare and lost time. And that's actually the combined from 2021 and 2022.
21 and 22, it says 22, 23.
The first column says 2021, and then the bolded section there is 2022, 2023.
Chart title, I think, is not accurate. There's 22, 23 versus
Through the
22.
chair, that's correct, yes, I just caught that.
And what are the possibilities of us getting the accurate number of incidents? Because if I heard you right, one incident could be put into the system multiple times. So we could probably say it's 1/3 of the incidents.
Through
Or
the
in the
chair.
future, can we possibly get the actual number of incidents rather than one incident reported several times?
So through the chair, we are very limited by what our software can collect. And because every employee is entitled to file an incident report when they have witnessed a violent incident, currently we don't have the software ability to drill that down. That is something that we very much want because we would like the statistics to be accurate.
So if 10 people witness an incident, they can all go in and report it.
Through the chair, that's correct. It could generate 10 separate reports.
We have a CTO on site, I can see her.
I'm sorry, I wasn't.
CTO,
Our
Chief
s-
Technology Officer.
Yeah, oh,
Oh,
sir. Well, what we'll do is, I mean, I made a note of it and I know Superintendent Strong and Manager Fearing have, so leave it with us to see if we can find a better way to drill down, and we'll work with our ICT department.
There's 2,000 plus incidents is like 8 incidents a day. I mean, it looks like we have violent schools out.
through the
Thank you,
chair.
Mr. Chairman.
If I may add one piece, this is part of a provincial litigation between OXTA and OECTA on the online incident reporting tools themselves. So this is a matter of provincial litigation because the tools that school boards use weren't able to capture the data in the way that the central parties had intended. So it is currently being litigated and worked on, even above us.
I understand the litigation part and the tool, but the data can be got from the tool and then massaged to give accurate information.
So
That's what
again,
I'm
through the
looking
chair, leave it with us and we'll take it away
Thank
for
you,
our
Mr.
next
Chairman.
report.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none? Daniel, next order of business.
So through the chair, we move on to E7, which is the risk management report, begins on page 45 of the agenda. And once again, Manager Fearing and Superintendent Strong are here to present the report and address any questions.
Thank you. Before trustees this evening is the risk management insurance update for the 2022-2023 school year. The risk management and insurance activities under the Health and Safety Department provide consultation and recommendations for risk management in the areas of insurance, property, crime, boiler, machinery liability, fleet automobile, and cyber. We work with the Ontario School Board Insurance Exchange, or OSB, to investigate and settle losses. In January of 2022, OSB initiated a new program that focused on cybersecurity. They have given us a cybersecurity score for Dufferin Peel. We have increased our score from 60.6% to 76.47% as further measures were implemented to enhance cybersecurity. This qualifies Dufferin Peel to maintain its current standard of insurance coverage. The OSB Insight program, which has replaced the HELP program, which was the Human Element Loss Prevention program. It is operated by a third party from OSB called Premium Risk Services, and they do conduct the inspections on behalf of OSB. When we do inspect the schools, they provide recommendations and suggestions to mitigate potential loss and to increase our insurability. The risk management insurance officer then shares the results with the principals and the custodial area supervisors for implementation. These insight inspections are conducted every 5 years, with the results being shared sometime during the 24-25 school year. Keeping in mind that the incidents reported under OSB and Charted are for third party other than employees. So we're looking at visitors and students. And if trustees could turn to the charts on pages 47 and 48 of your package. Appendix A is replicated in just a numerical way on page 48. So you'll see the types of claims that were initiated by students and by third parties. And if trustees turn to page 49, the chart is the liability claims. So you can see while these numbers are much lower, these are the claims that involve financial loss. And I'm happy to answer any questions that the trustees may have.
Any questions? Go ahead, Bert.
Are these numbers also similar to what Trustee D'Souza was pointing out, that they're a result of several reports?
So through the chair, no, these numbers are far more accurate because they involve insurance claims directly with the insurer, OSB.
Thank you.
Paula?
Thank you, through the chair. I wanted to ask about violent sports. Is a lot of these injuries, I see they're from sport or gym class. I just wanted to inquire about violent sports.
Sorry, through the chair, violent sports?
Well, football and rugby is known as violent sports, hockey probably too. I just wanted to know what is the numbers like for those injuries or accidents?
So through the chair, all of the numbers in here are categorized in how the insurer wishes us to process these claims. So sports and gym class could have been anything from flag football to dodgeball. Also, recess free play, they could have been playing their own game of football. And if we keep going, we even see something called rough play. So it's entirely possible, you see intramural sports in here as well, that it's an intermingling in all of these different categories, which could fall under that umbrella of violent sport.
Thank you. Is there any way to keep track of whether it's to do with a particular sport, just to keep track of the number of, the violent incidents that happen there? I'm just curious.
So through the chair, we would need to understand which sport category you would consider to be violent, and then we can ask the insurer if they can specify that for us.
So the violent would be football, rugby, and hockey. And I believe those are the only ones that are the most violent. Boxing? We don't do boxing, do we? Well, you're not going to get that injury in ping pong, I guess, but
Through the chair, let me see what I can find out from Osby.
thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none? Daniel, next order of business, please.
Thank you. And through the chair, we are now on to item E8, which is the interim financial report for the 8 months ending April 30th, 2024. And I begins on page 50 of your agenda, and I invite Executive Superintendent Chair Paca to present the report.
Thank you. And through the chair, this is the second interim report for this fiscal period, and it covers the period September 1st to April 30th. The report is intended to provide trustees with budget to actual financial status as at a point in time. And I will walk through some of the sections of the report so that the information hopefully makes sense to everybody who is reading through it. If you'll notice, if I can draw your attention to page 52, there is a summary dashboard report. And if I can draw your attention to the top left section of this report, what this shows you is information that has been prepared for this fiscal year. It starts with the estimates and then moves across to the revised estimates and then provides an updated forecast position. The estimates would have been prepared and approved and submitted in June of last year for this 23-24 year. The revised estimates were then updated in the fall and filed with the ministry in December of 2023. And the forecasted information is taking into consideration adjustments and changes that have been noted in both revenues and expenditures as we've progressed to this point in time, being at the end of April. What you will see in changes between, now the revised estimates is the most up-to-date budget information for this period. And what you'll see in the forecast, which is forecasting out to the end of the year, is a change in revenues of about 18.5 million. What that represents is the final closeout reconciliation with our previous LTD provider. So what they've had to do is go through the final year, reconcile all the accounts, and then we closed off with them. And in return, they flowed a refund to the board of about $17 million. That is in line with the type of plan we had with the previous provider. It was a refund accounting plan. So as they did that reconciliation, those funds came to the board. Another difference we're seeing in our revenue is increases in rental revenues, increased permit use. So that's starting to come through as well. When we move down to the expenditures, we're seeing some alarming trends. I'm not going to say alarming or more disturbing. And it's not really new. We've been seeing it play out. If you look across in the classroom line, what we are experiencing is a recruitment issue. So in many areas of our staffing, particularly paraprofessionals and professional staff, we are finding it very difficult to fill vacant positions in our board. This would include professional areas like psychologists, speech language pathologists, social workers, child and youth workers in particular, but we're also seeing this a little bit in your educational resource worker area. We're also seeing it in some of our board admin areas, technology to be one of them. So it's becoming harder and harder to recruit into school boards. It's not a trend just common to Dufferin Peel. This is happening across the province. So we are seeing a decrease in expenditures related to the fact that we are not able to fill vacancies in a timely way, and many vacancies across different employee groups. We're also seeing some increases in school operations and maintenance expenditure budgets as we go forward. This mainly to do with costs associated with a lot of fire alarm testing we've had to do this year, security costs going up, and increased in utilities. So we're seeing these play out and forecasting an increase in that area before the end of the year. All of these come down to what would be a change in our surplus deficit position for the year. So you could see where we at revised estimates, we had estimated an in-year deficit of 36.5 million. Because of these changes in revenue and offsetting changes in expense, we will see a potential deficit position closer to 16.6 million by the time we get to year end. So what that means is it's a lower in-year deficit. We add less to our accumulated deficit going forward. So rather than adding 36.5 to an accumulated deficit of 60 million, where we would have been at revised estimates, we will now add about 16 million to the 60 million accumulated deficit. So it's just less. It's still a deficit. It's still an accumulated deficit, but it's just not climbing at the pace we thought it would. As you move across that dashboard, there has been no changes to enrollment or staffing since we last reported, and those changes would have been reflected in revised estimates. So no changes since that time. If I can draw your attention to the next page, which is page 53. This is more of a detailed page of expenditures, and it shows you some of the detail of the categories of expense. So at 8 months period of the year, it is a point in time. It's 2/3. You would expect to see about 66.67% of your budget spent, leaving 33.3%. Again, we don't budget on a monthly basis, so that's really just looking at the entire year, and it's just a point in time. In most categories, we are in line with that, keeping in mind that some expenditures like transportation and supply teacher, they're only 10 months of the year, they're not 12 months. And you can see across paraprofessionals, professionals, where we're seeing the surplus conditions start to unfold, as well in the staff development area. That's just a change, further change from not doing as many release days for staff and using technology in a better way so that we don't have to pull people out of schools or out of classrooms to share PD, and just finding different ways to do that PD. Continuing education is always a little bit different because those expenditures will come further in the year. Most of those expenditures will play out in the summer. And other than that, those are the highlights of this report that we wanted to point out. So in conclusion, what it does mean is we will see a reduced deficit by the end of the year. We'll keep an eye on those alarming trends in recruitment to see what else happens before the end of the year. But at this point, that's where we see the updated position of the board by August 31st. Happy to take any questions on this information.
Thank you, Julie. Any questions? Maria, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you.
Just on page 50, I see there's some discussion around the long-term disability plan and can you just review some of those changes? We're obviously in a better position, which is good. But there's a lot of figures here and I'm just not necessarily following how that all works. Is that possible for you to share?
Absolutely, through the chair. If I walk everyone back to revised estimates time in December, we estimated a deficit of 36.5 million. A great component of that deficit was our LTD plan. At the start of this year, we moved from a refund accounting plan to an insured plan. So we changed providers. We went through that entire process, did the wrap-up reconciliation with our past provider, and moved forward. Because we're on an insured plan, the costs are expected to be relatively stable going forward. You don't have those pay up front and then get a refund at the end of the year, which caused a lot of change in the last few years. So going forward, we estimate our our LTD plan costs to be this year about 26.5 million with the new provider. Our estimated deficit was higher because we have an unfunded position in transportation where the new grant model doesn't cover our expenditures. So we do have a shortfall there. As well, we have an unfunded position when it comes to statutory benefits, CPP and EI. The ministry has not been keeping up with the changes in that benefit cost. And this year, even more so next year, there's a CPP enhancement, it's called CPP2 cost, that the ministry has not funded us for. So that's where we get to the 36.5 million. Then what happened when we closed off with our previous provider? They still had to do that final year in reconciliation and provide us with whatever refund we were due, which ended up being about 17 million. So when we bring that in, it reduces our in-year deficit for the year. It's a one-time revenue source, so that doesn't mean our deficit will be less going forward. It just helps with our in-year position.
So thank you for explaining that. That makes much more sense now. And so through the chair, although it's brought our deficit position down right now, that's obviously not going to stay, is what you're saying.
Through the chair, that's correct. But of course, there'll be more information when we bring a budget proposal forward to the board.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bria. Any other questions? Daryl, go ahead, please.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Julie, I heard you mentioning 16.5 million, but in the summary of financial results, it shows 19.85 million.
So through the chair, I believe you're referencing page 52 in the top left. So if you look under the column that says forecast, across from the surplus deficit row, we're saying our new deficit position will be 16.65. The 19.8 is the change, which includes revenue change and expenditure change in total.
So overall is 60.78 plus 16. Right now we are forecasted at 77 million deficit.
Through the chair, that would be an accumulated position going forward at year end. Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none. Julie, thank you to you, Carrie, Guy, and Scott. Thank you so much. Daniel, next order of business.
Thank you. Through the chair, we move on to item E9, the Public Budget Information Session Report. And once again, I invite Executive Superintendent Chair Paca to present the report, which begins on page 54 of your agenda.
Thank you. And through the chair, an important part of our budget development process for 2024-25 is ensuring that our stakeholders and our community members continue to be informed of the financial position of Dufferin Peel. We do have an accumulated deficit position, and we currently operate under a multi-year financial recovery plan with the ministry. All information and reports presented on budget development and budget to date have been posted on the Dufferin Peel website. On April 17th, financial services staff attended and presented budget information to the Special Education Advisory Committee, and we were there to seek input. And on April 24th, a live public budget information webcast was held, and a report on this session will be presented now by General Manager Carrie Salemi. And I do want to thank our chair for mentioning my staff that is with me here this evening. We do have our Manager of Budget, Guy Rangio. We do have our Superintendent of Financial Services, Scott Keys, and General Manager Carrie Salemi. And General Manager Salemi will present this report.
Thank you, Executive Superintendent Chirapaka, and through the chair. So as Executive Superintendent Chirapaka noted, we had a public information session, a live webcast on Wednesday, April the 24th. This date we correlated with this school council meetings to allow for school councils to participate and observe the webcast. The webcast was recorded and is posted on the public budget webpage, which is on the board's website. Many of the questions we were able to address during the webcast. However, responses could not be provided for all questions during the 1-hour session. So the questions were consolidated through the chat feature, and they were based on similar themes. So a summary of these questions can be found on pages 56 through 64 of this package. The questions and responses have also been posted on the public budget webpage. We did not include any school-specific questions in the summary. And that concludes our report. Are there any questions?
Ariel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for this. It's quite very complete. A question I have to ask you: is it possible? I know we communicate we communicate with our stakeholders out there through telecommunications. Is there some way we can make sure they realize that this is available? I mean, I don't want to go through an exercise that nobody's going to get the data, the information. I know that they were very busy, et cetera, but it's so nice to see something like that. And if they can get notification, something to the concept, considering, for example, the questions we asked you, we have the responses in this portal. I know you're doing it electronically, but somehow communicate it so we keep on pushing it out, at least in the foreseeable future.
So through the chair, one of the things we did this year was send the message back out through our schools and ask them to get that out to their school councils in their communities. So hopefully if that was done, they would know to go to the website.
Yeah. Good, that's exactly what I'm looking for, and that's great. It would be nice to find out if there's in the follow-up, when people do it, because we're just trying to make our life a little easier. And considering it in June, yeah, it would be really nice. So if you can follow up or something, no need to get back to me. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mario. Any other questions? None. Julie and team, thank you very much. Daniel?
Through the chair and continuing on with Julie and team, we move on to item E10, which is the 2024-2025 budget update, core education revenue. And once again, the report begins on page 65 of your agenda, and I invite Executive Superintendent Chirapaka to present the report.
Thank you. Yes, and again, I welcome our Superintendent of Financial Services, Scott Keys. He will be presenting alongside myself with this report. Tonight, what we're doing is continuing a process that we started last year, which was to introduce a phased approach to bringing forward budget information and expenditure information to the trustees. This report this evening is a focus only on grant detail, no expenditure detail, just to make sure that trustees are familiar with the changes that have taken place this year with ministry funding and to see where we are when it comes to the revenue side of the board for the budget that would come forward next week. I will highlight that, again, we will continue to be in a deficit position, and we do continue to operate under a multi-year financial recovery plan with the ministry. One of the major changes from the ministry, of course, was renaming the GSN to Core Education. So forgive me if I say GSN. It's been very difficult to make the change in terminology. We've been used to one for so long, but now we're getting used to the new lingo, so to say. If I can draw your attention to page 69 of this report, there is a chart that depicts what the ministry has done with the core education funding. I know I've shared this previously, but if I just take you quickly through the left column, you may be familiar with terminology we used around foundation grants, geographic circumstances, mental health and well-being, continuing education. These were all the different funding elements of GSN. And as you follow the arrow down, you can see that the ministry has changed this to core education funding and has only 6 pillars of funding. That doesn't mean anything else has changed. They've just taken all of those other calculations and folded them in under 6 pillars. If you continue across the page, they've taken the priorities and partnerships fundings that we would have called PPFs, and they've renamed that to be responsive education programs. Again, really no change in what they're flowing to us, but they've renamed the whole piece of it. And then capital funding, they've actually changed the name of capital funding to building, expanding, and renewing schools. And they've attached acronyms to all of these new pillars and new types of funding. So that really brief summary of how the ministry has changed the funding. But really, most of it is about terminology. The other major changes in core education funding, of course, include the impact of enrollments, which it always has. So there will be an impact to our enrollment. And there's been changes to include salaries and benefits as has been negotiated centrally, if it's been negotiated centrally. And more recently, the remedy agreement related to Bill 124. I'll provide a little bit more information on that later in the report. I'm just going to quickly go over the enrollment with everyone, and that's on page 71 of this report. The top highlights that we're looking at a proposed decrease overall of 424 average daily enrollment students. That's a decrease of 752 in elementary and an increase in secondary for a net of 424. The middle chart gives you a little bit of a picture for the last 8 years, where we've dropped over 9,400 ADE students, or approximately 12%. And then the chart at the bottom is a quick look at capacity compared to enrollment. So the capacity underutilization in our elementary schools continues to grow. It's a little bit better in secondary because we're seeing a slight increase in enrollment. And now I'll pass this report to Superintendent Keys to provide further details.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Executive Superintendent Cherapaka. I'm going to take you through some of the adjustments that they made to core education funding this year, which are your typical updates that they would make on an annual basis through the GSNs as well. So as previously noted, there is an update to the salary and benefit benchmarks to reflect the ratified QP Central agreements, and there'll be a labor provision for those that haven't ratified as well through our education workers and teachers unions. The Safe and Clean School Supplement has been discontinued, which did support some ERWs and our custodial staff as well. The Student Transportation Fund, as we heard a little bit about it earlier tonight, includes new benchmarks for distinct funding relating to contracted special purpose vehicles. So those are your minivans, your vans, and your taxis as well. And the use of updated census data in the funding formula has been reflected for the 2021 Statistics Canada Census. That's a bit of a tongue twister. And will be updated as a phase-in approach over the next 5 years. Within the Special Education Fund, the special education amount, or the SIA, is being replaced with a specialized equipment allocation. And the ministry has proposed a new approach to this funding to better meet the needs of students, reduce administrative burden, and increase flexibility for school boards. So that change is about $985,000 for Dufferin Peel. I'll draw your attention to page 70 of the agenda, which is Appendix A and gives a overview of the core education funding and as in comparison to revised estimates. So you'll see a lot of zero balances in there. That doesn't mean we're not getting that money anymore, but as previously noted, it's just being reallocated to one of the 6 funding pillars through the core education funding. The responsive education programs, or the REPS, will, as we noted, will replace the former partnership and priority funds. The most significant year-over-year change in the REPS is the elimination of the staffing to support de-streaming and transition to high school grant, which this, in the current year, supported over 30 FTE teacher positions, or about $4.1 million. And again, drawing your attention to the appendix on page 72, gives a more detailed list of what our confirmed reps are this year in comparison to what we had in the current year. So I'll now pass it back over to Executive Superintendent Cherapaka, who will give some more details on Bill 124.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to highlight one more item, and that has to do with the funding that Dufferin Peel is receiving for the remedy payments related to Bill 124. This has been a monumental task, to put it lightly, not only for HR staff, but payroll staff, to go back and deal with this and process some of these payments. We are not done. I believe we have 3 occupational groups completed by the end of this month. And what it means is there was the arbitration win where the unions were able to go back and get a settlement for the years when they received only 1%, 1%, 1%. So the ministry has had an obligation to provide the funding to school boards. In total, we received $44 million to pay the 3 years worth of remedy payments. We are not done those calculations. As I've said, we've finished about 3 of the occupation groups. We do expect our actual costs to exceed that. We don't know the exact amount. We are looking at an approximate over $2 million difference in what we've been provided in funding and what it will actually cost us to pay it out. But we won't know that until we finish all the payments. But I wanted to highlight that information so the trustees understand what we received, what we're doing, and as we continue, they're kind of alongside central deals and local deals being ratified, and then once a central deal is done, we move forward with the Bill 124 payment, and then continue on with any other negotiated increases that may be coming for that 22 to 26 time period. So there's a lot going on with salaries and benefits right now, but this is just one aspect that we wanted to highlight, which is the revenue that came in for the Bill 124 remedy. And we're happy to take questions on all of that information.
Any questions? Mario?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The question I've asked you to staff, it's just a little question in terms of when we're talking about money availability and for St. Alfred's and what have you, I see this information. Is this what you were talking to originally in terms of proposals that was submitted to us or requested from us from the ministry in terms of additional monies for building on schools and what have you?
No, through the chair, I was referencing capital priorities, which is a funding program that the ministry has. Comes out annually.
Yes.
So that's outside of this.
Is there any way we can get money for schools on this program? I'm talking like upgrading schools and things of that nature. St. Alfred's is 60 since 1960.
So through the chair, I would like to highlight that a lot of the information prepared in this report reflected operating grants. We do have a proposal for capital budget coming forward tonight as well. Any work that we would look to do on buildings, major components, structure, whether it's rebuild, renew, renovate, that would all be related to capital funding from the ministry. One way to source capital funding is through the capital priority process, where we submit our requests and we have to go through an approval process. The other source we have to do major renovations and work on our buildings and major components of our buildings comes from school renewal and the school conditions improvement funding, which is capital. And that, I mean, we get approximately 20 to 30 million every year, but if you recall, reports have come forward on long-term facilities master's plan, and we have a 5-year renewal backlog of $345 million worth of work that has to be done. So
Can we sit down and
that's
talk?
where we are with our ability to get funding from the ministry.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, can we sit down together and talk about this?
Absolutely, no problem. We
I
can do that.
appreciate it. That's it for now. Thank you.
Herman? Speak in the mic, please.
To the chair, my question is, these 6 funding pillars, are they fenced? Meaning you cannot take funds from one pillar to use in another?
So through the chair, there are several enveloping provisions built into the core education funding. One of them is special education. So special education must be spent only on special education. You can overspend it, you cannot underspend. If you underspend the funding they give you, you have to put it in reserve and carry it forward only for special education needs. In board administration, they've introduced another layer of enveloping where you can only spend a certain percentage above the funding they've given you. If you exceed that, you have to submit a plan to the ministry as to how you're going to become back in balanced position in that area. They also have an amount that you can spend relative to plant operations. School facilities fund, you can only use so much, and it's a percentage of how much you get in the classroom staffing and learning resources area. So there's a lot of enveloping, but the main one would be the special education one.
So the enveloping occurs within the pillar.
Through the chair, within that pillar, yes. But in other cases, it's across pillars. So you're spending, the overspending you can do in your facilities is a percentage of your grant calculation in classroom staffing and learning resources. So it'll be different for every board because every board's funding is different.
So there is cross funding between the pillars?
Through the chair, not necessarily funding, but you can underspend in one and overspend in the other.
That's what I mean.
Yes, you can.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Daryl?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, under the core education funding, is there any segregation between funding for elementary school and funding for secondary school?
So through the chair, there are minor elements that we would see because it's based on enrollment, right? So some of the calculations underneath would be based on your elementary enrollment coming in and some based on your secondary. There's no restrictions about using it only in the elementary panel compared to the secondary panel. It's just a calculation of your total amount because a lot of them are based on enrollment. But there would be no restriction to say you get this much based on your enrollment at elementary levels. You can only spend that much in elementary. We don't have that.
I'm not talking about spending. I'm
Yeah.
talking about receiving funds because secondary estimates are approximately 328 higher than last year.
Yes.
Elementary has gone down. So my assumption is that if it's a secondary student, the funding might be a bit higher. So we might get some more dollars for the 300 students and less dollars for the 700. So we might break even from a funding perspective.
Right. So through the chair, a good example of that would be when it comes to our funding to meet class size. So because our secondary students have gone up, we would get more funding because that means you need more classes and more teachers. Elementary enrollment has gone down, so we would lose funding. You need less classes, less teaching staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just one more question.
Go ahead.
I noticed this trustee, $44,000 or $57,000. Trustee association fees of $57,000 has been taken away? Or?
So through the chair, it hasn't been taken away. It's just under the board admin pillar. What that is the flow through. So that's money that comes through to Dufferin Peel, and then we immediately send it off to OCSTA to represent the board in bargaining.
Right. So we had not we did not estimate it for 24-25.
So through the chair, we didn't lose it. It's just now captured in the School Board Administration Fund, the SBAF, that's further up. So all of those different amounts of funding shown under the 23-24 revised estimates column have been captured under the 6 pillars now. So we haven't actually lost anything. It's just in a different area.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Daryl. Luz, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question through the chair, through Executive Superintendent Chair Paca. You talk about the remedy plan. They gave us funding, but you also mentioned it's not enough. I guess my question to the chair, can we go back to the government to fund the 2 million, approximate 2 million?
So through the chair, that is the plan right now. All school boards are going to track their actual expenditures, and then we're going to go back and say, wasn't enough. What are you going to do? I don't know what the end result will be, but that's why we're tracking it, so that we can go back and report that.
Right. Through the chair, I just also want to share at the calls with the chairs before with the former minister, the cost of doing all the job that to do this remedy plan, he always says no. But I also know at one point in time, I think there was a resolution in Oxta, or someone's working on a resolution. If not, we're going to do it to basically put that in and say, you know, all the boards basically are spending more money in order to do these retroactive payments. So some of them, they have to look for the people, the teachers or the staff that had left or had moved somewhere. So there's a lot of time involved, a lot of resources that the staff have been using. So it's not only our board that's affected, but I think we'll keep an eye on maybe following that and maybe doing a Oxta resolution too. So
Through the chair, that's a very important part. The administrative component of this has been crazy. The staff have been through a lot to try to get this implemented and paid. We have deadlines that we have to meet. Unions are holding us accountable, and associations, and it has been a lot on very specific staff groups that have to implement this.
thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, hearing none. Daniel, next order of business, which does have a recommendation, but we will go ahead first, please.
Sure. Thank you. Through the chair, we move on to section F, reports from committees and administration requiring action. F1, which begins on page 73 of your agenda, is the proposed 2024-2025 capital budget. And once again, I invite Executive Superintendent Chair Paca to present the report.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm back. And again, I am pleased to bring forward the balanced 24-25 capital budget this evening. As mentioned earlier, the ministry did change the reference to capital to building, expanding, and renewing schools. So BEARS, we're trying to get used to that acronym. And the elements of the capital funding haven't really been changed in totality, just the total name capital. If I can draw your attention to page 75, it's the appendix to this report. And I can walk you through the capital expenditures for the year. You'll notice in the left-hand column, there has been no change to these types of funding areas. What we've tried to do in this appendix is highlight the capital areas that we're going to be experiencing the expenditures in. So for example, at the top, you'll see the 2 capital priority projects we received approval for from the ministry, the St. Anne Catholic Elementary School Replacement School and the new Mount Pleasant No. 2 Catholic Elementary School. As you work your way across the page, you'll see that the estimated expenditure that we plan to incur in this coming year related to building that school is 14.3 million, which comes from capital priority funding, which you'll see as you move from column 2 over. Under the new Mount Pleasant School, you'll see the total cost we expect to spend of 14.3 million is funded from 2 different areas. It's coming from capital priorities, 11.8, and childcare capital, 2.5. So that's kind of how you read this report. Our total expense broken down by where the funding's coming from, and then again, the total funding at the end. Then we move down to what we mentioned previously, which is the school renewal and school conditions improvement funding. That is the money we get to address all of our urgent needs and keeping our schools in a good state of repair. Addresses things like major building components, roofs, windows, plumbing, heating, ventilation projects, and well as some building interior changes and some of the external work like paving projects. So all in all, we're proposing to get $33 million from the ministry for 24-25, and all of that will go towards those facilities projects that were mentioned. Although the list that came forward was for this year, there'll be another list for next year to utilize that full amount of funding. We do have our project with Ascension of Our Lord field upgrade, and you can see the $2 million being funded from proceeds of disposition for that project. Temporary accommodation is funding we get to move portables around, get them set up at new sites, as well as to lease instructional space we need for some programs. So that's funding we get for that. The land improvement actually should be shown combined with the Mount Pleasant School. What that is using some EDC funds to prep the land, some of the site work that has to get done for that project. And then the next 2 are really more flow-through amounts that come from the ministry, the debt service costs that pay interest on our debentures that already exist with the ministry, and the 55 School Board Trust, which is a flow-through of 3.369 million every year, comes to the board and then it goes back out again. So that's the proposed capital plan for 24-25, and happy to take questions on that.
Ariel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. This is exactly what I want to talk about together. In terms of what's happening, what's going on. Give me some context. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Maria?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. So would this be the funding that would be helping to cover the air conditioning that is supposed to be installed at Our Lady of Mount Carmel Catholic Secondary School? And the field repair that's supposed to happen at St. Aloysius Gonzaga Catholic Secondary School?
So, well, we'll split them up. The AC, yes, this is the type of funding that covers AC along with every other renewal or maintenance work. With regards to the field upgrade, we're still working through the city on our portion of what that should be. So, but ultimately it may come through this, or it may be another ask depending on what they're looking for the ministry, to the Ministry of Education to use potentially proceeds of disposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions? Before I move the motion, I'll pass the chair over to Mario In the funding, in the, on page 75, I'm assuming based on the motion that was made just prior to St. Catherine of Siena being built, which was quite a while ago, that says any new schools, new additions to schools are air conditioned. So my assumption is that both of these schools will have just that.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Thank you very much. You want me to move it, Mario, or do
You
you?
want to take a share? Yes. Yes, sure.
All right. Anybody want to move the motion that the Administration and Finance Committee recommend that the Board of Trustees approve the proposed balanced 2024-2025 total capital budget of $76.2 million?
I'll move, Mr. Chairman.
Moved by Stefano. Any questions? Any opposed? Carried. All in, well, yeah, yes, all in favor.
We're good, we're good.
Additional businesses, none. Questions asked of and by? Go ahead, Daryl.
You, Mr. Chairman, I had asked more than once with regard to the cost of Edwin and how we're going to fund that. Still not received a response in issues and events. So is that going to come? And when?
Through the, it's a good question. Let me, because I think that was made at a different meeting, but let me follow up with everybody involved, because I believe anyway, please leave it with me and I will follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And Mario?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question. Is there still a policy that school-generated funds cannot be put into, let's say, a fixed interest bearing account, or say a lot of these elementary schools have 7,000, 8,000 over the summer. Can that not be put into a GIC?
Through the chair, the intention of school-generated funds is to not generate large balances. The idea is the money comes out and it goes back into investments for the students. So that's why we don't want to encourage any long-term investments, so that the schools are cycling those funds as directed by the purpose of why they fundraised in the first place.
Well, this would be just over the summer, and it would offset the banking fees that they're paying. I believe that was brought up by Trustee Giannica before, where they were paying banking fees. So it's just, the interest over 2 months won't be a lot, and it would be put back and to be spent to offset expenses.
So through the chair, that of course would entail staff knowing how to do that investment, being there to check when it expires or comes up due. Again, what we've tried to encourage with the schools is you're really not there to profit off your school-generated funds. You're supposed to be collecting those funds for a specific purpose and using them for a specific purpose. If we go down the path of introducing how to invest it and do that, then it encourages that stockpiling of funds at the school to be able to invest it and make interest off it. So we're not in a position to recommend that right now. What we are doing, as you've indicated with regards to banking fees, is looking at a central plan with one financial institution that all of our schools could use, whereby there would be no banking fees and we would get better services and abilities for our schools. So that would then eliminate some of the fee issues that schools feel they may have with their current financial institutions. So we are looking at what we can do to help schools from that perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Stefano. Stefano.
Yep,
and-
thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, is it my turn now or just to this point?
Go ahead.
All right, thank you. To Trustee Herman Valeria's points, actually Executive Superintendent Cheripaca's comments. We've been looking at trying to get the right banking institution for a while now. How long will it take before our schools will be able to benefit from this? Because I was looking at some of the parent council meetings that I was at, or school council meetings I'm at, they're getting hit pretty hard with some with fees.
So thank you for that question. Through the chair, we did spend quite a significant amount of time with discussions with one financial institution and ended up getting nowhere. So we changed course, started with another one. We have moved. We're at a good place to move forward. It's not ideal to change schools banking in June when everybody's about to leave and there's a lot going on. So we would be looking to roll this out early fall. And we feel it might need to happen over a phased period where we take a group of schools, get them going, then the next group. So we would be looking at phasing this in maybe over the next year, transition to this one financial institution. We know it's going to take a lot of communication, a lot of training, a lot of working with our schools, especially if it means one school doesn't really want to leave the institution they have. But we're prepared to move forward with this and point out the benefits of doing this.
Well, if the individual at that school doesn't want to move their money, politely just tell them it's not their money. So we shouldn't have any issues with that because again, parents are fundraising this money, schools are fundraising these monies, and these corporations are taking the money away, and they don't care. So I'm happy to hear that we're going to start going forward with that. The movement from one institution to another, is that something that's done centrally at the board, or is it done at the school?
So through the chair, it's going to take a combination of the school team and the board office team. But what it will do is solve a lot of the problems that schools run into where they're trying to get new signing authorities and they can't seem to get that to work. And then the board staff, central staff can step in and help assist with that. So there is going to be a lot of benefits to doing this, but it will be a combination of the schools will need to be part of it as well as central staff.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Julie, for that information. Through you, Mr. Chairman, I have a couple more questions. Is that okay?
Ed.
Thank you. Next question to Associate Director Del Bianco. And I guess whoever else wants to answer it on the plant side. When we're installing these boulevard signs or these marquee signs, I understand speaking to Associate Director Del Bianco that really the city tells us where to put it. And sometimes it's in a great location where it's open, and other times it's in a not so great location and there's a bush in the way or some trees or whatever it is in the way. Two questions are, one, when that happens, are we required, so if we have to cut down a tree for whatever reason, are we required to plant another tree? And at whose cost? Because it's not we're not telling the city where to put it. The city's telling us where to put it. And I guess the second question I can ask after you answer.
All right, through the chair. When a tree is cut down, we generally replant it back somewhere else. In that case, yeah, the city directs us where these signs must go, and so they don't refund us for any work that we would have to do when it comes to cutting trees down to clear that. But we haven't had to do that very often. But if there's a particular one that's of concern, please let us know.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I guess it follows up to my next question about same point. If we are removing bushes or whatever it is, can we ensure that I'm not saying reuse the bush, moving from one spot to another because that may not work. But can we find some way of making it of beautifying, around the same areas? Because uh, some parents have told me, well, why'd you guys put the sign there? That was such a nice bush there, or there were some beautiful flowers there. Now they're going to be gone. Can we ensure that we're actually going to have something put back in place and make it sort of look nice, uh, for years going down?
To the chair, yes.
Thank you.
Take that back and work with the plant staff on making sure that occurs.
Perfect. Thank you. And more of a comment or request, anybody within the planning department, when it comes to um, school boundaries, can you just have can any of you guys give me a call tomorrow? Is that possible? I have a couple
Absolutely.
questions.
We'll have someone reach out to you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. That is it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you, everybody.
You, Mario, Mario, Luz, Bria.
Thank you. A while back, I'd asked someone to have a meeting with Rudy. Has anybody got connected with him?
Through the chair, my executive assistant continues to try to reach out and get some feedback as to when a meeting could take place.
Okay, if you want me to get involved, just ask and I'll be there for you.
Thank you, Mario. Luz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of questions or updates. First is, where are we at the Ascension of Our Lord field? We did that opening and telling people this is coming. So I just want to find out, have we did the groundbreaking or is it being built now? Just an update on that through the chair.
Through the chair, that project is with the city. We're working with them. They've got drawings done and they've done their assessment work, but there hasn't been any groundbreaking to my understanding at this point in time. So I'll have to check into that.
Thank you. I would really appreciate it. And just one last question, Mr. Chair. Also an update on, are you able to give us an update on the sale of the two buildings? Am I allowed to ask that question?
Through the chair, we can provide that in issues and events.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Daryl?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm wondering why we put a purple filter for today's board meeting as well as the CNF meeting.
I find it slimming. I find it, no, I don't. So we believe through the chair that it's the camera.
No, it's even you look at it on YouTube, it's showing purple. So it's a filter. This is not camera, it's a
Okay.
filter.
We haven't been able to track down the actual.
Through the chair, we believe that it is a cable that's causing the camera to do that, which is then showing it in YouTube in that purple. So we
You
will
did
be
not
reviewing-
test it before today's special board
We
meeting?
We always test them and it
okay.
failed.
multiple times.
Murphy's not here tonight.
And while it works fantastic for the board meeting, sometimes we do run into some
Someone
challenges.
tamper with the table, security didn't do their job.
Something did.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, hearing none? Thank you very much. Well, no more questions, no declared in-camera report, nope.
This is our final Administration and Finance Committee meeting of the 2023-2024 school year.
Will be.
This is it. This is our final one.
Yeah, for
Our
this
next
year.
one will be in September.
September. Right, next board meeting, next committee meeting will be in September. So have a good summer. Thank you to staff, all of you that stayed. And if, I just want to say, I apologize. I didn't get an opportunity to thank Jessica Fearing as well. So if staff could say thank you for attending tonight too, because I know it's been a long long night. So move adjournment, moved by Luz. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you and good night.